Social isolation among the elderly is often called a silent epidemic, and for good reason. While the challenges of aging are well documented, the profound impact of loneliness and social disconnection on older adults is frequently underestimated. According to research by John Cacioppo, a pioneer in the study of loneliness, chronic social isolation is not merely an emotional experience, but a serious health risk, comparable to smoking or obesity. His work has shown that when human beings are deprived of meaningful social interactions over time, it triggers a cascade of negative biological responses, including elevated stress hormones, weakened immune function, and an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. This understanding reframes loneliness from a simple feeling to a tangible threat to life and well-being, making it essential for psychologists, caregivers, and society at large to recognize and address it. Older adults face a unique vulnerability to social isolation due to life transitions that often accompany aging. Retirement, the loss of a spouse or close friends, reduced mobility, and even sensory impairments such as declining vision or hearing can drastically limit opportunities for social engagement. Laura Carstensen, in her socio-emotional selectivity theory, explains that as people age, they prioritize emotionally meaningful relationships, focusing on quality over quantity. While this selective focus can enrich the lives of many seniors, it also means that when these key connections are lost, the emotional void can be devastating. The shrinking of social circles, combined with diminished opportunities to meet new people, creates a perfect storm for isolation and its associated psychological and physical consequences. The effects of isolation go beyond loneliness as a subjective state. They infiltrate cognition and behavior in ways that can profoundly alter quality of life. Cacioppo's studies, using both neuroimaging and longitudinal surveys, reveal that isolated individuals often exhibit hypervigilance to social threats and increased sensitivity to perceived rejection. This heightened alertness, while adaptive in evolutionary terms, paradoxically deepens the sense of alienation and perpetuates avoidance of social engagement. In older adults, such patterns can accelerate cognitive decline and exacerbate depressive symptoms, creating a feedback loop that is difficult to interrupt without intervention. Existential psychologists like Irvin D. Yalom offer another lens through which to view social isolation in the elderly. In his book, Existential Psychotherapy, Yalom emphasizes that human beings have a fundamental need for connection, and when that need is unmet, it can evoke feelings of existential loneliness, a profound sense of separateness that goes beyond mere absence of company. For older adults, existential loneliness is often intensified by awareness of mortality and reflection on a life that is no longer filled with the bustling social roles of youth or middle age. Yalom's work reminds us that isolation is not only a social problem, but also an existential one, tapping into deep human fears of insignificance and abandonment. Beyond individual psychological experiences, social isolation carries measurable societal costs. Older adults who are disconnected from family, community, or social institutions are more likely to require intensive medical and psychiatric care. Studies have shown that socially isolated seniors are at higher risk for hospital readmission, chronic disease progression, and early mortality. This makes the problem not only a personal tragedy, but a public health issue that demands attention from policymakers, healthcare providers, and communities. Understanding the prevalence of social isolation in the elderly also requires acknowledging cultural and demographic factors. In some societies, extended families provide natural buffers against loneliness, whereas in others, seniors may live alone or in institutions, heightening the risk of isolation. The rise of digital communication offers potential remedies, yet it is not a panacea. Many older adults face technological barriers or lack the confidence to maintain meaningful online connections, which can leave them feeling even more alienated. This intersection of personal, societal, and technological factors illustrates the complexity of the issue and underscores why interventions must be multifaceted. Addressing social isolation begins with recognition and empathy. Health professionals, families, and community organizations must identify seniors at risk, not just by observable social activity, but by assessing subjective experiences of loneliness. Psychological research consistently shows that it is the perceived quality of social relationships, not merely the number of contacts, that predicts mental and physical health outcomes. This insight is crucial for designing effective interventions, as it shifts the focus from simply increasing social interaction to fostering meaningful connections that meet the emotional needs of older adults. In essence, the silent epidemic of social isolation is a multidimensional problem, blending psychological, biological, and societal consequences. Through the work of researchers like Cacioppo, Carstensen, and Yalom, we understand that it is far more than a fleeting emotion. It is a life-altering condition that requires both awareness and action. Recognizing the gravity of social isolation is the first step toward interventions that not only reconnect older adults to their communities, but also restore purpose, meaning, and psychological well-being. In doing so, society affirms the inherent dignity of its elders and ensures that the later chapters of life can be lived with connection, engagement, and vitality. The effects of social isolation on the elderly extend far beyond mere feelings of loneliness. They penetrate the very core of mental and physical health, shaping the mind, body, and overall quality of life. Chronic isolation acts as a stressor that disrupts biological systems and psychological processes alike. John Cacioppo's extensive research demonstrates that prolonged loneliness activates the body's stress response, leading to elevated cortisol levels, increased blood pressure, and heightened inflammatory activity. These physiological changes not only accelerate the onset of cardiovascular disease, but also compromise immune function, making older adults more vulnerable to infections and slower to recover from illness. In essence, isolation functions as a slow-acting toxin, silently eroding health while often remaining invisible to caregivers and family members. Psychologically, the elderly experience isolation in profound and complex ways. Irvin D. Yalom, in Existential Psychotherapy, highlights the concept of existential loneliness, a deep-seated sense of separateness that emerges when fundamental human needs for connection and meaning are unmet. For many seniors, isolation coincides with major life transitions, such as retirement, bereavement, or physical limitations, which can trigger feelings of purposelessness and despair. Unlike temporary loneliness, which can be alleviated by casual social interaction, existential loneliness affects the very way an individual perceives life itself. This can manifest as a diminished sense of identity, loss of agency, and increasing withdrawal from the world, which paradoxically deepens isolation and exacerbates psychological suffering. Cognitive functioning is also significantly affected by isolation. Studies have shown that older adults experiencing prolonged loneliness are at higher risk of developing cognitive decline and dementia. The mechanisms are multifactorial. Reduced mental stimulation, stress-induced neurochemical changes, and diminished engagement in purposeful activities all contribute to the deterioration of memory, attention, and executive functioning. This connection between social disconnection and cognitive impairment underscores the urgency of early interventions, as the consequences extend beyond emotional discomfort to tangible, measurable deficits in brain health. Depression and anxiety are common psychological outcomes of isolation, Unlike transient mood disturbances, the depression associated with social disconnection in older adults tends to be persistent and resistant to conventional coping strategies. Loneliness alters brain networks responsible for emotional regulation, particularly the prefrontal cortex and limbic system, making it harder for seniors to manage negative emotions and stress. Yalom's insights into the human confrontation with mortality highlight another dimension. Awareness of aging and the inevitability of death can intensify feelings of isolation, amplifying anxiety and depressive symptoms in ways that are uniquely existential. Social isolation also impacts behavioral patterns in ways that perpetuate the problem. Individuals who feel chronically lonely often engage in avoidance behaviors, withdrawing further from social situations due to fear of rejection or low self-esteem. This avoidance loop mirrors findings in Cacioppo's research, where perceived social threat and hypervigilance to interpersonal cues reinforce isolation. Over time, these patterns solidify into habits that are increasingly difficult to disrupt, demonstrating that isolation is both a cause and consequence of psychological decline. Importantly, isolation is not experienced uniformly. It intersects with socio-economic, cultural, and individual factors. Older adults with limited financial resources may lack access to transportation or social programs, while those living in rural or underserved areas may face geographical barriers to interaction. Cultural attitudes toward aging, family structures, and gender roles further shape how loneliness is experienced and addressed. Recognizing these nuances is essential for tailoring interventions that are not only effective, but also culturally sensitive and accessible. Therapeutic approaches can mitigate the psychological toll of isolation, but they require more than generic social contact. Research in geropsychology emphasizes the importance of meaningful engagement, activities that provide purpose, foster competence, and facilitate emotional intimacy. Interventions such as cognitive behavioral therapy for loneliness, reminiscence therapy, and structured group activities have shown measurable improvements in mood, self-esteem, and overall life satisfaction. These therapies operate on multiple levels. They alleviate the immediate emotional distress of isolation while equipping seniors with cognitive and behavioral tools to sustain long-term engagement. Understanding the psychological and physiological consequences of social isolation reveals its pervasive impact on older adults. It is not merely a social inconvenience, it is a profound health concern that intertwines mind, body, and existential well-being. By appreciating the depth of its effects, caregivers, health professionals, and policymakers can better prioritize early identification and targeted interventions. In doing so, society can address not only the symptoms of isolation, but its root causes, empowering older adults to regain emotional resilience, cognitive vitality, and a renewed sense of purpose in their lives. As individuals age, the search for meaning becomes a central psychological task, often intensified by experiences of social isolation. While younger adults may find purpose through career, family responsibilities, or social exploration, older adults frequently encounter a shift in life structure that can leave them questioning the significance of their existence. Viktor Frankl, in his seminal work, Man's Search for Meaning, emphasizes that the human drive for meaning persists throughout life, and its absence can exacerbate suffering, particularly in times of adversity. For seniors experiencing isolation, the loss of daily interactions and communal roles can create a void that challenges not only emotional stability, but the very sense of self. Social isolation intensifies existential reflection. When older adults find themselves alone, they often confront unresolved questions about life achievements, regrets, and mortality. Yalom, in existential psychotherapy, discusses this confrontation with finitude as both an opportunity and a source of anxiety. The elderly are uniquely positioned to engage in life review, a process of reflecting on past experiences, deriving lessons, and consolidating a coherent personal narrative. However, without supportive social frameworks, these reflections can become ruminative rather than restorative, amplifying feelings of insignificance or wasted potential. In essence, the absence of meaningful relationships leaves seniors not only socially disconnected, but existentially adrift. Carstensen's socio-emotional selectivity theory further illuminates why meaning becomes paramount in later life. As time horizons shrink, older adults prioritize emotionally significant relationships and purposeful activities. These connections serve as anchors for identity and sources of fulfillment. In contrast, isolation deprives individuals of opportunities to reinforce their sense of value and legacy, making loneliness not merely an emotional state, but a challenge to existential coherence. This explains why interventions that foster meaningful engagement, such as volunteering, intergenerational programs, or creative pursuits, are particularly effective for older adults, as they restore not only social contact, but also a sense of life purpose. Psychological research underscores that life narratives are deeply intertwined with well-being. Studies in geropsychology reveal that seniors who actively construct and share their personal stories experience improved cognitive function, reduced depressive symptoms, and enhanced resilience. Reminiscence therapy, for example, encourages older adults to recall and communicate life experiences, fostering identity continuity and emotional integration. By reflecting on past triumphs and hardships, seniors can reclaim agency over their life story, transforming the isolation-induced void into a space of self-understanding and growth. Frankl's principle that meaning can be found even in suffering resonates powerfully here. The experience of isolation itself can become a catalyst for introspection, personal insight, and renewed purpose if supported appropriately. Isolation, however, can distort life narratives, leading to feelings of regret or existential despair. Without social feedback and affirmation, seniors may dwell excessively on perceived failures or missed opportunities, a phenomenon that research has linked to increased depression and anxiety. In contrast, meaningful interpersonal engagement provides validation, perspective, and emotional resonance, allowing older adults to integrate difficult memories into a coherent, balanced self-concept. The absence of such connections leaves the elderly vulnerable to narrative fragmentation, where life stories become disjointed, self-critical, and lacking continuity. The pursuit of purpose also intersects with physical and cognitive health. Engaging in purposeful activities motivates seniors to maintain routines, stimulate cognition, and remain physically active, which in turn reinforces psychological well-being. Frankl's assertion that meaning can be found through action is particularly relevant. The act of contributing, teaching, creating, or caring for others offers concrete evidence of one's value in the world. In socially isolated seniors, facilitating opportunities for meaningful engagement is therefore both a psychological and practical intervention, strengthening resilience against the deleterious effects of loneliness. Finally, fostering life narratives and purpose in isolated seniors requires a multi-dimensional approach. Therapeutic interventions can integrate narrative therapy, group discussions, creative projects, and structured reflection exercises, all aimed at helping individuals articulate and reclaim their life story. Communities and caregivers can also play a vital role, offering opportunities for mentorship, storytelling, and socially embedded projects that connect the elderly with younger generations. By bridging isolation with meaning-making, we create pathways that restore identity, affirm value, and counteract the existential weight of loneliness. Ultimately, understanding the elderly's search for purpose illuminates the profound connection between social isolation and existential well-being. The absence of relationships does not simply reduce happiness. It challenges the very framework through which seniors interpret their lives. Drawing on the insights of Frankl, Yalom, and Carstensen, it becomes clear that interventions must do more than provide social contact. They must nurture meaning, foster narrative coherence, and help older adults find significance in the time that remains. Through such efforts, the elderly can move from isolation to engagement, from disconnection to purpose, reclaiming not only social bonds, but also the essential sense that their lives continue to matter. Human beings are inherently social creatures, and nowhere is this more evident than in the lives of older adults. Social connection is not merely a source of comfort. It functions as a form of medicine, influencing mental, emotional, and physical health. Research consistently demonstrates that older adults with strong social networks experience lower rates of depression, anxiety, and cognitive decline, as well as improved immune function and cardiovascular health. John Cacioppo's work on loneliness highlights that perceived social isolation triggers a stress response in the body, whereas meaningful relationships act as a buffer, reducing cortisol levels and fostering resilience. In essence, relationships are not simply optional extras in later life. They are essential mechanisms for survival and well-being. Irvin D. Yalom, in existential psychotherapy, emphasizes the psychological necessity of connection, framing interpersonal relationships as a counterbalance to existential loneliness. For older adults, isolation often coincides with an acute awareness of mortality, heightening the need for intimate, emotionally resonant connections. These relationships provide affirmation, support, and a sense of belonging, helping seniors navigate life's challenges while sustaining purpose and identity. Without such connections, even minor life stresses can feel insurmountable, illustrating that relationships act as both a protective factor and a conduit for meaning. Laura Carstensen's socio-emotional selectivity theory offers further insight into the quality of relationships that matter most in later life. As individuals age, they prioritize emotionally fulfilling interactions over superficial social encounters. This selectivity underscores the importance of depth rather than quantity. A single meaningful connection can have a more profound effect on well-being than numerous casual acquaintances. For seniors experiencing isolation, the absence of such high-quality relationships contributes to both emotional distress and a diminished sense of life satisfaction. Therapeutic and community interventions, therefore, must focus on facilitating emotionally significant interactions, not merely increasing the number of social contacts. The benefits of social connection extend beyond emotional support to cognitive and behavioral outcomes. Studies show that older adults who maintain strong relationships demonstrate enhanced cognitive performance, including better memory, attention, and executive functioning. Social engagement encourages mental stimulation through conversation, shared problem-solving, and collaborative activities, creating a feedback loop that strengthens brain health. Furthermore, relationships motivate health-promoting behaviors such as regular exercise, adherence to medical treatments, and participation in meaningful activities. In this sense, connection functions as both medicine and preventive care, with profound implications for overall longevity and quality of life. Social relationships also serve as a foundation for resilience. Yalom points out that confronting life's existential challenges, including loss, illness, and mortality, is more manageable when shared with others. Supportive relationships provide a framework for coping, offering perspective, empathy, and encouragement that buffer against psychological distress. Conversely, isolation amplifies vulnerability, leaving seniors to face life's hardships alone and increasing the likelihood of depression, anxiety, and despair. By fostering relationships, caregivers and communities effectively inoculate older adults against the deleterious effects of social disconnection. Creating meaningful connections in later life requires intentional effort, particularly for those who have experienced prolonged isolation. Interventions such as group therapy, community-based programs, and intergenerational initiatives have demonstrated effectiveness in fostering emotional intimacy, shared purpose, and mutual support. Reminiscence therapy and storytelling circles allow seniors to connect over shared experiences, reinforcing identity and validating life narratives. Digital technologies, when appropriately accessible and user-friendly, also provide avenues for maintaining connections with distant family and friends, though they cannot fully replace face-to-face interaction. Importantly, the role of relationships in well-being is reciprocal. Older adults benefit not only from receiving support, but also from providing it. Volunteering, mentoring, and participating in caregiving activities enable seniors to contribute meaningfully to others' lives, reinforcing self-worth and sustaining purpose. Frankl's concept that meaning arises through engagement with life and service to others is particularly relevant here. Connection is both a gift received and a gift given, creating cycles of mutual benefit that enhance psychological and existential well-being. Ultimately, viewing relationships as medicine reframes social connection from a luxury to a necessity. In the context of aging, fostering high-quality, emotionally fulfilling relationships is one of the most effective ways to counteract the physical, cognitive, and psychological consequences of isolation. Drawing from Cacioppo, Carstensen, and Yalom, it becomes clear that human connection is a vital intervention, capable of restoring purpose, resilience, and vitality to the lives of older adults. By prioritizing relationships, society affirms the profound truth that to be connected is not merely to survive, but to thrive. Addressing social isolation in older adults requires interventions that are not only compassionate, but also grounded in evidence-based psychological research. Loneliness is more than an emotional discomfort. It is a complex condition with measurable impacts on cognition, mental health, and physical well-being. Effective interventions aim to reduce subjective feelings of isolation while simultaneously enhancing opportunities for meaningful social engagement, cognitive stimulation, and emotional support. Over the past decades, numerous studies have identified therapies and programs that produce significant improvements in older adults' mental and emotional health, providing hope that the silent epidemic of isolation can be mitigated. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is one of the most rigorously studied interventions for loneliness. Adapted for older adults, CBT focuses on restructuring negative thought patterns, challenging self-defeating beliefs about social interactions, and promoting proactive engagement with others. Research shows that seniors who undergo CBT report reductions in perceived loneliness, improvements in mood, and enhanced social confidence. By addressing maladaptive cognitions, such as "I am not valued" or "I am too old to make friends," CBT empowers older adults to reframe their social experiences, reduce avoidance behaviors, and cultivate meaningful connections. In this way, the therapy not only alleviates distress, but also provides tools for sustaining long-term social engagement. Group therapy and structured social support programs offer another avenue for intervention, combining psychological guidance with direct social interaction. Groups provide a space for older adults to share experiences, validate emotions, and build interpersonal skills within a supportive environment. Yalom emphasizes the therapeutic power of group dynamics in existential psychotherapy, noting that being part of a group can counteract feelings of isolation by fostering a sense of belonging and shared humanity. In older adults, participation in group activities, whether focused on reminiscence, creative expression, or problem-solving, has been shown to improve emotional well-being, reduce depressive symptoms, and strengthen social networks. Reminiscence therapy is particularly effective for older adults, leveraging life narratives to restore identity, meaning, and connection. In this approach, seniors are encouraged to recall and discuss past experiences, achievements, and challenges, often with peers or caregivers. Research indicates that reminiscence therapy enhances self-esteem, mitigates depressive symptoms, and reinforces a sense of continuity across the lifespan. This intervention aligns closely with Frankl's existential framework, which emphasizes the importance of deriving meaning from one's life experiences. By reflecting on personal narratives, older adults gain perspective on challenges, celebrate accomplishments, and foster connections through shared stories, thereby counteracting the isolating effects of social disconnection. Technology-based interventions are emerging as another valuable tool in addressing social isolation. Digital platforms can facilitate virtual interactions, online support groups, and remote participation in community activities. While not a substitute for in-person connection, technology can bridge gaps for seniors with mobility limitations, geographic isolation, or other barriers to engagement. Studies demonstrate that when older adults are trained and supported in using digital tools, they experience improved social connectedness, increased self-efficacy, and enhanced mood. Importantly, these interventions must be designed with accessibility and user-friendliness in mind, recognizing that technology is only beneficial if seniors feel confident and comfortable using it. Multi-component interventions combining psychological therapy, social engagement, and practical support have demonstrated the most robust outcomes. For example, programs that integrate CBT, group sessions, and community participation not only reduce loneliness, but also promote cognitive health, physical activity, and emotional resilience. These holistic approaches recognize that isolation is multifaceted, influenced by cognitive patterns, social structures, and environmental barriers. By addressing multiple dimensions simultaneously, interventions can produce sustainable improvements in well-being, helping older adults build supportive networks, regain a sense of purpose, and maintain psychological health. Finally, the effectiveness of interventions is amplified when tailored to the individual's needs, preferences, and cultural context. Social isolation manifests differently across personalities, life experiences, and social environments. Personalized approaches, whether focusing on building skills, facilitating meaningful relationships, or encouraging purposeful activity, ensure that older adults engage in interventions that resonate with their identity and life story. This individualized focus aligns with the work of Carstensen and Yalom, emphasizing the emotional and existential dimensions of connection, rather than merely the quantity of social interactions. In conclusion, evidence-based psychological interventions provide concrete strategies to combat loneliness in older adults. From CBT and group therapy to reminiscence work and technology-facilitated engagement, these approaches address the cognitive, emotional, and social dimensions of isolation. By implementing interventions that are tailored, multifaceted, and grounded in rigorous research, caregivers and mental health professionals can empower seniors to reclaim social connection, enhance life satisfaction, and restore meaning in later life. Far from inevitable, the experience of isolation can be alleviated through targeted, compassionate, and scientifically informed action, demonstrating that even in the later stages of life, human beings can flourish when supported effectively. The ultimate goal in addressing social isolation among older adults is not merely to provide temporary relief, but to create sustainable social support systems that foster lasting connection, purpose, and well-being. While individual interventions such as cognitive behavioral therapy, reminiscence therapy, or group programs are effective, their impact is maximized when embedded within broader community and societal structures that actively support older adults. Sustainable support systems recognize that human connection is an ongoing need, requiring intentional design, resources, and commitment from families, communities, and policymakers alike. Community-based initiatives are foundational in this effort. Programs that encourage intergenerational interaction, volunteer engagement, and social participation help create environments in which seniors can maintain meaningful relationships. Laura Carstensen's socio-emotional selectivity theory emphasizes that older adults prioritize emotionally significant connections. Community programs that facilitate these types of interactions, such as mentoring, shared projects, or local clubs, effectively strengthen psychological resilience and life satisfaction. For example, intergenerational programs where seniors share skills or life experiences with younger participants not only enhance a sense of purpose, but also foster social reciprocity, reinforcing the value of the elderly within society. Technology also plays an increasingly important role in sustainable social support systems. While face-to-face contact remains essential, digital platforms can complement traditional interaction by offering avenues for communication, online interest groups, and access to educational or recreational activities. Training programs that build digital literacy among seniors empower them to maintain connections with distant family members, participate in virtual communities, and access mental health resources. Studies indicate that when older adults are equipped to use technology confidently, they report lower levels of loneliness, higher self-efficacy, and greater overall engagement, demonstrating that sustainable systems can combine personal interaction with innovative tools. Healthcare and social services are critical partners in creating lasting support networks. Regular screening for social isolation, inclusion of social prescriptions in medical care, and integration of psychological support into primary care can identify at-risk seniors and connect them to appropriate resources. Cacioppo's research emphasizes that early detection of loneliness can prevent the cascade of physiological and cognitive consequences associated with prolonged isolation. By systematically embedding social care within healthcare systems, communities can provide continuous support rather than intermittent or reactive interventions, ensuring that older adults remain connected and cared for throughout later life. Family involvement remains a cornerstone of sustainable social support. Educating families about the psychological and physical consequences of social isolation and providing guidance on maintaining regular, meaningful contact with older relatives can mitigate feelings of loneliness. Even brief, consistent interactions, such as daily calls, shared meals, or participation in community events, have measurable benefits for seniors' mental health. Moreover, involving older adults in decision-making about social activities honors their autonomy, reinforces their sense of agency, and strengthens the emotional quality of relationships, aligning with the existential insights of Yalom regarding connection, meaning, and affirmation of life. Policy and societal infrastructure also play a vital role. Governments and local authorities can support initiatives that provide accessible transportation, safe community spaces, and inclusive programs that encourage participation among seniors. Policies that fund community centers, subsidize social activities, and incentivize volunteer engagement ensure that social support is not left to chance but is built into the fabric of society. Sustainable support systems recognize that isolation is not an inevitable part of aging. Rather, it is a societal challenge that requires proactive, structural solutions. Ultimately, empowerment arises when older adults are positioned as active participants rather than passive recipients of support. Opportunities for volunteering, mentoring, creative expression, and skill sharing allow seniors to contribute meaningfully, reinforcing self-worth and social relevance. Viktor Frankl's emphasis on purpose and meaning resonates here. The ability to impact others, engage in life, and create value transforms the experience of aging from one of vulnerability to one of active participation and fulfillment. By fostering environments where seniors can contribute, we not only combat isolation, but also enhance the collective social fabric. In conclusion, creating sustainable social support systems for older adults requires a multi-dimensional, collaborative approach that integrates community programs, technology, healthcare, family engagement, and policy initiatives. By embedding connection, purpose, and emotional support into everyday life, society can ensure that older adults are not left isolated or marginalized. Drawing on the insights of Cacioppo, Carstensen, Yalom, and Frankl, it is clear that sustainable systems must address both psychological and existential needs, empowering seniors to live with dignity, resilience, and meaning. The solution to social isolation lies not only in individual interventions, but in a comprehensive network of support that nurtures human connection and affirms the inherent value of life at every stage. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more content on psychology, well-being, and practical strategies to improve life at every stage. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you or someone you know experienced social isolation, and what helped? Your story could inspire others. Turn on notifications so you never miss our weekly videos exploring the mind, human behavior, and tools for a more meaningful life. Together, we can build a community that supports learning, connection, and personal growth, one viewer at a time.